Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a live edition of the Valley Hoops Insider podcast. Actually, we call it Voices of the Valley. When we get together with broadcasters, writers, etc., from the Missouri Valley or the Ohio Valley conferences to talk about the sport we love, the leagues we love, and in particular, the Missouri Valley Conference is on our mind today. This weekend, a big game between the nationally ranked Indiana State Sycamores and the Southern Illinois Salukis. And we thought it'd be fun to get their play-by-play broadcasters in on the conversation today. First, Joey O'Rourke, he's with Indiana State, bringing the great broadcast of the Sycamores games, and he's on this historic run with the Trees. And then their former announcer, Luke Martin, who's with Southern Illinois. True confession to all of you out there, I'm doing the game on ESPN Plus, and I thought I got to get smarter. I better talk to smart people. So I've invited these two guys onto the podcast today. Joey, Luke, thanks for joining us today and starting to fill us up with info about these two teams.
Harry, I appreciate you having me, and I'm looking forward to it. Going to be a lot of fun. Always love the chance to talk with Luke Martin and pick his brain about things, and looking forward to getting to know you more as well.
No, absolutely, Harry. Thanks. It's good to be with Joey. It's nice that, Joey's not firing questions at me. That's typically, when Joey and I talk, Joey's been the one that's kind of had to grill me. So I'm glad that I get to see him get grilled for a little bit here by you, Harry.
Well, you guys are similar in that both of you have followed legends into your current job. Luke following Mike Reese there at Southern Illinois, and Joey following Luke there at Indiana State. Luke, Joey, what's it like following a legend?
Oh, it's tough to, a lot of big shoes to fill. I think I said it. Luke did such a great job as being an ambassador for Indiana State, not just the basketball program, but the overall sports at Indiana State University. And Luke endeared himself to a lot of the local people here. And, everybody you talk to, everybody loves Luke. We all love Luke. He did a great job, and I can just hope to be half the guy that Luke Martin was at Indiana State.
I love that answer. Hey, I want to talk hoops, and I'll get to you in a second, Luke. Joey, the biggest question in my mind right now is Jason Kent. So he leaves that game the other night. I don't even know what kind of injury. I just know he got injured. And tell us about Jason Kent, at least the nature of the injury.
Yeah, that was a big loss in that game, and I think it shined through in the result of that game. He was evaluated for a head injury. As far as I know, he's going to be fine. I'd say it's a day-to-day situation right now with Jason Kent.
So a head injury, I had no idea. Luke, I want to ask you to make the case why Xavier Johnson is the Larry Bird Trophy Award winner this year in the Missouri Valley Conference.
Well, I think there's a lot of cases. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves for X. I mean, you look at, of course, him being able to be the dynamic scorer that he is, but very rarely do you ever see a guy that can score it and distribute it as well as he has. He's the first Valley player to average over 6 assists in a game since Adam Emenecker, which Adam Emenecker, of course, he was the Larry Bird Player of the Year that year, but his team also won the league.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is an aspect of this too. There has to be some sort of, I think, team success in it. But you look at Southern, I mean, before the season started, there weren't very many people that were saying, look out for Southern Illinois. Many people were saying Southern's going to be 9th or worse. And that wasn't necessarily a total reflection of an Xavier Johnson or some of the guys on the roster. I mean, for my example, Harry and Joey, I mean, when I got here, X wasn't even practicing because he was hurt. He was out. He was still rehabbing. Southern did not have their starting 5 that you see now practicing as a group until November. And then right before the Indiana State game, A.J. Ferguson went out. So it was a group that were still trying to get cohesiveness, but the common part of it is Xavier Johnson. And it's just being able to do so much with this group. He's led the team in scoring in whatever it is now, 23 straight games. He's had 5 assists or more in every game since the Indiana State game up until last night. He was held to 4 against Belmont. But just what he does for Southern is just unlike anybody else in this league. I mean, I know you asked Joey about Jason Kent. I mean, he's extremely valuable, of course, to Indiana State. And you look across the league, there are going to be guys that you go, if we didn't have this guy, we would be nowhere close to where we're at. So there's a lot of teams that can make that case. I just don't know if there's anybody in the league that has transformed a team and has given them a chance to win so many games like X has. And the respect he has, I think, from all the coaches and all the other people throughout the league is high. It's his numbers speak for themselves. And if anybody had any guess, like, is it the non-conference? Is it really who Southern's playing? Once he's gotten into the league, his efficiency numbers aren't quite as high as they were in non-conference. But you know what? Our league's pretty darn good. There's a lot of really good defenses in this league. And if you're averaging up there with Tucker DeVries over 22 a game within the league, that's a staggering number and a really hard number to reach.
Saturday on our television broadcast, we're going to say the Bird Watch. Every one of those TV games, we create 3 players that are on the Bird Watch, and we've got X on it and Tucker DeVries and Robbie Avila. Joey, he's just such a unique player. Tell the folks that haven't yet seen the begoggled Avila just about his game.
Yeah, I mean, he's so unique. I mean, obviously, all the commentators, analysts out there call him the college basketball Jokic because he plays like Jokic. And I mean, you look at Jokic's body. I mean, it's not a tone-defining body, and that's kind of where Robbie's at as well. And every time
gives me
you look
hope. Joey, gives me hope.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But the way he passes the ball and the way that he shoots the ball from the outside, and then the patience he shows on the inside, the footwork he's got, the head moves he's got, the head fakes, I mean, just makes him so special. And again, you talk to people and they're like, man, I can't believe how good he is. And it's just, it's kind of like lulling you to sleep. He'll lull you to sleep and then bam, he'll hit you. He's just such a unique player with his ability to pass the ball, shoot the ball. And one thing that I think that Robbie's gotten better at as the season's gone on is his defense down in low posts has gotten better. And that's really allowed Indiana State defensively to do the things that they've done this year.
Yeah, they're better defensively than people really give them credit for. They're the number 1 offensive team in the league. And Luke Martin, the Dogs are the number 1 defensive team. Floorburn U is relatively back. Brag a little bit about the Egyptian Dogs' defensive style and persistence on that end of the floor. Did we freeze Luke? I think we might have froze him. Maybe Luke will rejoin us. We'll just stay with you for a second. Then Joey, both these teams have just come. Are they back, Luke?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, the internet here in Banterra Center is going a little wacky.
Well, we can't have that. Luke, tell us about Floorburn U. I was just saying that they're the Indiana State's the number 1 offense, and the Egyptian Dogs are the number 1 defense. Talk a little bit about their style of defensive passion.
Yeah, I would say this. I mean, a lot of the numbers, and honestly, I learned it from Coach Schertz. I look more at defensive efficiency numbers than necessarily what you give up points per game, because every game is different in terms of how many possessions you play. Southern's more kind of in the middle of the Missouri Valley Conference in terms of defensive efficiency, but that is what Southern, puts their hat on. I mean, it is, they are going to defend you for all 40 minutes. And you look back to that game in Terre Haute, the first meeting, they really defended relatively well against Indiana State. They just couldn't get any of their offense going. And then last night, that's what was so disappointing in Nashville, was it wasn't up to the defensive standard that Coach Mullins always has, which that's also part of what, you talked about Xavier Johnson and what he does. It's also what he does on the defensive side of the floor. I don't think there's been, it's hard to say there's not a more improved player than Xavier Johnson because of his numbers, but Trent Brown has been phenomenal. He used to be a defensive liability at times. I think a lot of that was because of his health. He wasn't always healthy. This is his first full healthy year. He's starting to drive more to the basket, not just shoot threes. He's not just a guy that will just chuck up threes all game long. He'll drive, he'll shot fake, but defensively, he's able to take on a little bit more than what he did a year ago. So it's a team effort on the defensive side. Southern will always wear their hat on that side of the basketball court, because it doesn't matter. I could talk to Coach Mullins about, hey, what's the key with this? How do you do this? Where can you get the offense maybe to flow better at times? And it's all going to come back, well, we need a defensive stop first. And that's what Coach Mullins will always hang his hat on. That's what this team will always hang their hat on.
Joey, there's so much conversation about the offensive system at Indiana State, and I've talked to Coach and a number of the players about that system. And it's kind of read, react. It's kind of not really scripted, but it's poetry in motion. Talk about the offensive side of the Sycamore team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I've never seen. It's something that has just been a joy to watch and practice and walkthroughs, and then to pick Coach Schertz's brain. I mean, what he's looking at, how he's going about things, and the things that he does with the offense is just spectacular. You're right; it is poetry in motion. And the other night, Indiana State did, and it's been a struggle the last 5-6 games to really get the offense going shooting wise. It's not for the lack of open looks, as they're getting open looks. They're running good offense, just not making shots. But again, to me, Josh Schertz is an offensive genius, and the ways that he does things to scheme things to get his guys the looks, it's just something that I've never seen before.
I think he's a genius too, but when you got Isaiah Swope and Ryan Conwell and Robbie Avila and Jason Kent, Julian Larry, you might have a chance to have a good offense. They're players.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And you got to give a lot of credit to the guys for buying in. I mean, and you know this, and anybody knows this. If you're going to have a team that is going to reach the pinnacle of what they want to reach to every year, you got to have guys that are buying into their roles. And that's one thing about this team. Like, you look at a Jason King, he's a guy you don't have to run a play for. He just bought into his role of being an elite cutter, rebounding the basketball, and finding ways to help the team, because Isaiah Swope has the ball in his hands a lot. Conwell has the ball in his hands a lot. Avila has the ball in his hands a lot. So, again, you got to give credit to the guys as well for buying into the role and buying into the system.
Luke, when I think about the Egyptian Dogs, I think of X. I kind of think of Trent. And then there's a whole bunch of guys I don't know anything about. It's just a lot of guys that fill in roles. I'm a big Troy D'Amico fan. I think he makes winning plays. But you look at them and you think the sum of the parts, man, is, it's like that old phrase, it's not the individual things, it's the sum of how they all mesh together. How does Brian Mullins patch all this together and come up with a productive team? Because they've been really good this year.
Well, I think Coach Mullins would tell you that's been a part for him this year. It's been the biggest challenge, Harry. It's been trying to figure out exactly what his rotation will look like. Not to say it's all on the guys, but, I think an interesting number when you look at, Kim Palm does percentage of minutes played. And the top two guys in the league are Trent Brown and Xavier Johnson. But if you combine both of these teams, I think 8 of the top 22 players in terms of minutes logged, in terms of percentage minutes, will be playing in this game on Saturday. So these are two teams that, don't want to say that the bench is not always occupied, because Southern has been able to get to their bench at times. It's just somebody different every game. I mean, for Southern, when they've had success this year, I think a lot of it is when their forwards and when their post players have success. And Clarence Rupert, when his motor is on, and I got to give Clarence a big shout out, because how he's been playing really in the last 5 to 6 games in terms of rebounds, he is an absolute machine down there, and he will just attack the glass, go make a play. We kind of talked about, Joey, guys buying into their roles. I think Clarence has really bought into his role, even though he may not be a guy that's going to necessarily be a double-double guy every night in terms of going out to get you anywhere between 15 to 20 points, but he has shown at times this year where he can be capable of doing that. And then Scotty Abube off the bench. I mean, Scotty is a very high productive guy when you look at in terms of his points per minutes played on the season. And he's such a size problem for guys, and he's extremely athletic. Just for Scotty, it's been trying to build that consistency with anybody. A.J. Ferguson, it's trying to build that consistency. But there's been times where A.J. Ferguson, where he's cutting up the Northern Iowa Panthers on the road and having a really good game. I mean, there's so many different guys. You brought up Troy D'Amico. I mean, Troy's been shooting the three really well here in the last 5 games. I think close to about 35% or higher. I think he's even closer to 40%. I haven't looked at the updated numbers this morning, but Troy has played well. But just a lot of those guys have a lot of minutes, on those legs, and it's trying to capitalize your time in practice versus also utilizing those guys in your game. And Harry, you've talked to Coach Schertz many times. I know I have, and Brian's the same way. I mean, it's not like this is an NBA season where you're playing a ton of games within a week stretch, but you got to win the game. And coaches are going to trust the guys that they trust. And if that means you're going to play, there was a stretch where Xavier Johnson played all 85 minutes of the Missouri State game, 45 minutes, and then the Drake game to follow. I mean, every minute, every second of a game, that's a huge load on a player. But the coaches they trust those guys, and those guys have earned it. So it's really on them to try to continue to battle through and persevere.
If you're swiping by on Twitter right now, that's Joey O'Rourke, the play-by-play voice of the Indiana State Sycamores, and Luke Martin, the play-by-play voice of the Southern Illinois Salukis. They will be on the call Saturday, 6 p.m. On their various radio stations, and I'm fortunate enough to be doing it for ESPN Plus this weekend, and so we're talking about that game in particular. Joey, both these teams coming off of a loss, and I watched part of the post-game conversation with Coach Schertz. And he's affable and nice and philosophical, most of the time. And the other night, he called his team soft, uninspired, entitled. I was like, uh-oh, they poked the bear.
Yeah.
I mean, like, tell us a little bit about that, particular occurrence, but also just, he said he could kind of see it coming and couldn't head it off at the pass.
Yeah, and he's right. It's a trend where kind of like going into the Drake game, Indiana State was winning games, but wasn't exactly playing their best. They were turning the ball over at a high rate, and that's not something that's been happening of late with the turnovers, but you just kind of felt a trend, and that Drake game kind of served as a reset. And it's like, all right, we got to get refocused. We got to get back to what we were doing. And then you look at that game, the next game that Saturday in Belmont, maybe the best game Indiana State's played all year long. And right now, there's never a good time to lose a game because there's so much at stake as far as the regular season championship goes. People are talking about at-large bids this time of year. But, I told Coach in the post game, I said, I'm a guy that's glass half full, so I'm going to try and look at this as a positive. But you're right. Josh Schertz didn't pull any punches, and you can kind of feel that something was going on into that game. But you trust Coach Schertz, you trust his team to get back, and maybe it's one of those things that you need a reset, you need a refocus to go into these final 5 games of the regular season. And you think about it with you want the national ranking. Absolutely. You want to be in that AP poll. You break the drought. But again, some of the local radio or local media, acting like it's over. You reached the pinnacle. And, I think that's kind of how he saw it. It's like, hey, you think you've arrived, but you haven't arrived yet. It's still a lot to do. And so I think that's a lot of what was going into that. And, with the national ranking comes a lot of distractions. Other media are coming in, wanting to do, things with the players, things with the coaches. And, sometimes you just need that reset because this sport in being in a mid-major, and I think Luke's done a great job promoting the Valley in a positive manner. The Valley doesn't get as much respect as it should nationally. And, it's a fickle game that you're playing with, and a loss like that to Illinois State, give them a lot of credit. They played probably what might be their best game of the season in that one. But I think it serves as a good mindset or reminder that, hey, we're not there. We still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and it was a terrible loss in the sense that it was a bad loss. It was a quad 3 or 4 or 17, whatever quads there are these days. And instantly we all we Valley apologists went into oh no, what about seeding? What about 2 teams in the tournament? All those kinds of things. We immediately go into panic mode, Joey, because you're right. We don't believe the league gets the respect it truly deserves. Luke, you talked about Scotty Abube and you talked about Clarence and Joey. The Egyptian Dogs have 3 post players to run maybe potentially at Robbie Avila on Saturday.
Yeah.
Do you think that's how Coach Mullins will employ his defenders?
I mean, I wouldn't see why not. I mean, that is one thing that I thought Illinois State did a really good job at. I thought, with Kendall Lewis, and I thought Miles Foster was a man that was possessed, motivated, and looked like he had a point to prove on Tuesday night in that win for Illinois State. But you look at the Missouri State game, you look at the you look at this game. Rupert and Abube, they pose big issues for this Indiana State team as far as the rebounding goes and what they can do in the post against Robbie defensively. So I believe that he will employ them against Robbie and try and get physical with them.
Yeah, Luke, hack a Google, is that what we're going to call it Saturday? But you think that's the way it'll go? He'll throw all 3 of those guys in there, just rotate them through?
Well, I mean, they're going to play him regardless of who you play. I mean, because that's where I think when Southern, as I said, when Southern's been successful this year, Harry, when they were successful against Belmont and Banterra back in January, Scotty Bube was a big part of that game. You look at games where Southern has gone on a run, odds are it's come from that group. I mean, X has been X. I mean, there's going to be moments where late in shot clocks where he is going to make just shots where you tip your cap and go, man, that's a heck of a shot by a really good player. But X needs help. There has to be more of a supporting cast to help him out, and those guys are no question. It doesn't matter if it's not just because it's Robbie Avila this weekend. I mean, whoever it is, wherever you go throughout this league, where they attack Darnell Brody with those guys. I mean, they really try to utilize those guys, which if you can do that, then that may open some things out on the perimeter because, Southern has struggled shooting the three in the last couple of games for the most part this year. Southern's been a pretty reliable three-point team offensively, and they've been really good defensively in terms of defending the three-point arc. But those guys will be a big part. They have to. I mean, they absolutely have to for those reasons, because if you cannot take, and I say take, I mean, there's no taking Robbie Avila out of games. I mean, he is just way too good, a phenomenal player in every way, shape, or form, and even better person away from the court. But they got to be able to utilize Scotty, and they got to be able to utilize Clarence in those ways to have success on Saturday.
And Luke, I want to take it a step forward. You mentioned AJ. When he's going, all of a sudden there's that second offensive option that is he's a difference maker. The way he can move without the ball and move with the basketball in his hands.
Absolutely. I mean, because he's so quick. I mean, he's really fast. I mean, that's one of the things that so many teams get caught off guard when they play a team like Indiana State because of their speed. You can't really replicate their speed, and it takes a little bit of time once you get into a game to try to adjust, and that's what AJ adds. I mean, AJ is very quick, right there with Xavier, but what AJ's getting better at is learning how to play off of X. I think that's what this team throughout the year, when they've been able to have success, it's trying to learn how teams are going to guard Xavier, and then what can they do off of him. And AJ has shown his touch around the rim is really good, Harry. I mean, I'm amazed when AJ just will rise in the middle of a lane and just a little teardrop, and his touch on the basketball very rarely ever misses. He has the ability to, when he turns that corner, and if he's got a lane, he can get to the rim in just a matter of a second. I mean, it is quick in a blink of an eye, and they have to utilize him. I mean, look, we've talked about it all show long. I mean, the reason Southern is in this position, no question, a big chunk of that is on Xavier Johnson, but they have gotten support at key times in games. I mean, they don't win at Illinois State if it's not for Trent Brown knocking down 6 threes. I mean, there's so many different. Kennard Davis has been big, a freshman at times, to come in defensively and get stops. Jarrett Hensley got the defensive stop of the game against Isaiah Rivera at UIC. He doesn't get that defensive stop, Dogs probably lose at UIC. So, I mean, there's many guys on this team that you look for. It's not that you got to have everybody say you have to match what Xavier does. Nobody can. And there aren't very many people in this league that can. But what you do have to do is you got to fill your role that night. Whatever your role is that night, you have to be up to the challenge to be able to do it.
One of the things we do in this podcast is remind people to go to Don Brown Chevrolet here in St. Louis. They're on Kings Highway at the entrance to the hill. And it's a great Chevrolet dealership, but you want to get a hold of my friend Ben Yates. He is a dynamic salesman. I went and bought a new car back around Thanksgiving. And, man, it was just an enjoyable process. My cacti green Trailblazer is in the parking lot right now. Spectacular. Okay. I'm driving it to all the Valley cities. People admire my car everywhere I go. Anyway, it's Don Brown Chevrolet, but you want to call salesman Ben Yates there. He will take all that manipulation out, all that crazy stuff. He just tells you the bare bones facts and helps you get into the car you really need. And I needed one. So go to Don Brown Chevrolet and get a hold of Ben Yates there at Don Brown Chevrolet. A lot of great matchups in this game. Joey, when I think of how on earth do you stop Isaiah Swope? How on earth do you stop Ryan Conwell? You know, the cutting and backdoor work of Jason Kent and all of that. It's impossible. The Saluki should just give up, right, Joey?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that trap, Harry. But, you know, it is. It's tough to stop Swope and Conwell. And Luke talked about their speed is – you can't replicate that in practice. I mean, you just absolutely can't. And, Isaiah Swope has been struggling. I mean, it's no secret. He's been struggling with his shot, hasn't been, shooting it as well as he had been early on through the middle part of the season. But when you look at it, it's like some of the numbers that he was putting up as far as shooting and stuff like that goes at the usage rate that he was, probably just not realistic. Not it's something you can absolutely go throughout an entire season and continue at. But you still look at it, he's still shooting 40% from three. I mean, it's like people have to understand, like 40% from three is really, really good. But Swope, I mean, he's just such a unique guy. He can score at all the levels. He's got a great pull-up game. He can get going. And I think I say it on the broadcast every time. If he makes the first one, he makes one, you can almost guarantee that second one's going down. And as far as Ryan Conwell goes, I said it on Twitter the other day, or X, whatever this thing that we are on anymore is. Ryan Conwell's steady Eddie for this team. Never too high, never too low. You never can tell if he's frustrated or he's happy. He's just steady Eddie. And in that Missouri State game, and Indiana State needed him in the first half. He scores 18 points. And without those 18 points, Indiana State gets blown out of that basketball game. He was steady Eddie, kept them at bay. So, again, the marriage of those two by Josh Schertz in year one to bring two guys that weren't even with the program last year in, then mix them in with Julian Larry, and to have them play as a three-guard system the way they have, I just don't know if we've seen anything like it.
It's amazing what they've been able to do. Luke, Julian Larry v. Xavier Johnson, two great defenders, great athletes, guys that don't get tired, guys that don't wear down, guys that are just special people. That head-to-head matchup, if that's the way it plays out, talk about the interaction and the challenge that those two, man on man.
Well, you mentioned it. It's kind of ironic you bring up Ju because, out of all the guys, I mean, I was able to get to know so well when I was in Terre Haute. Julian Larry's right up there because Julie and I, we were one of the few still people left that were there that was prior to the Schertz era officially getting started. And to see the work that Ju has put in, I mean, I don't even still think to this day, I mean, he was robbed of the most improved team last year. And you look at his numbers this year, I mean, he probably still should have an argument to be on most improved, even though he should have been on it a year ago. But knowing X now and getting to know Xavier, I mean, both those guys are just, and I mean this in all sincerity, just the best people you could ever find. I mean, just the teammates you want in your locker room and the work ethic. I mean, if you're here at Banterra Center most weeks at 6 a.m. and you hear a ball bouncing, it's Xavier Johnson. It was the same way back in Terre Haute. I mean, if you're walking around ISU Arena and you hear a ball bouncing, guarantee it's Julian Larry in that gym getting extra work in. But in terms of just this matchup, both of them have earned the matchup, if that makes any sense. Both of them have put in the work to be Julian so elite defensively and do not oversleep what he can do offensively too. He just knows his role and distributes the ball and know where to go for Coach Schertz's team. And Xavier, man, you look at him, Harry, what I like about X, I think of all the things, and there's a lot to like about Xavier, but the one thing that I really admire about him, doesn't matter if you're on a 10-0 run, if the other team's on a 10-0 run, if he's got 30, if he's only got 5, he looks the same. You look into his eyes, that demeanor, that calming demeanor, it's like that throughout every minute of the game. And whether it's going to be the possession to win the game or not, he's a guy that's made a shot to win games, and he's had opportunities to win games and not come through, yet his look never changes. His confidence never slacks. That, to me, is what I respect so much about X, because both of those guys that you brought up are really similar in terms of their makeup, their work ethic, how they go about the game, how they respect the game, and how they really take what they do seriously each and every night. I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be a lot of fun to see those two guys, and not just those two guys. It's going to be a lot of fun to see these two teams play.
Luke, before we let you go, attendance is up around the league. Incrementally in some places, gigantically there in Terre Haute. What kind of crowd and what kind of atmosphere will the Sycamores be coming into this weekend? If they had beaten Illinois State, it might have been a little bit more intense. But the 23rd ranked team in the nation coming to Banterra Center.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be intense no matter what. I mean, this will be the first ranked team coming into this building in 9 years to the day on Saturday in terms of in the league. That was Wichita State. Buffalo, I believe Coach Oates was still the coach at Buffalo at the time when they were ranked and came here in the non-conference. But, I mean, Banterra Center has had so many great atmospheres this year. I mean, St. Louis, I wasn't here for that when I was on the road for football, but just listening and watching from afar, getting a regional school to come in, that place was juiced up and, of course, went heavily in Southern's favor. Oklahoma State on national TV, getting a Power 5 program to come in the Banterra. I mean, you could just feel the juice once the doors opened and people came in and the dawn was packed and loud and made a huge impact. It's going to be that way on Saturday night. That's special about the league. When you have teams that have passionate fan bases, like you don't want to go into a gym where there's just a handful of people in there and you got to create your own juice. For both teams on Saturday, neither team will have to create their own juice on Saturday night here in Carbondale. I mean, it will be a tremendous environment. Saluki Nation, I know right now, they're upset with the loss last night. There's been a lot of close losses at home this year for Southern where they feel like should have beat Bradley when you were up, 20 plus in the game. Should have beat Missouri State when you're up 12 late. There's been some frustrations, but the one thing I give Saluki Nation all the time is they continue to come back and they continue to come out and they continue to be loud and supportive of this group. And I expect nothing else from them on Saturday. And I expect the Dog Pound to be loud and active and will really be a fun environment on Saturday.
I love the Dog Pound. And what do they call it? Joey the Forest or something there at
Yeah,
Terre
the
Haute.
Forest. Yeah, the Forest in Terre Haute. And you got to give a shout out to the Forest. They have been showing up in great numbers this year. They were fantastic. I thought they were electric on Tuesday night, even though Indiana State couldn't pull out that win. But Luke, you're right. You talk about the close losses, and you're familiar with it in Terre Haute. And Terre Haute is a town that it's been hard to get them to come out and support Indiana State on a consistent basis. And it's been good to see the crowds that have come inside the Holman Center, the sellouts against Bradley, the sellouts against Drake. They're saying that next Saturday's game against UIC is close to a sellout as well. And I think there are going to be a lot of Sycamore fans that make the trip down to Carbondale to the Banterra Center because, again, this is a really good basketball team. And I was on my show last night, Joey and the King, with Mike King, and we were talking about it. And I said, I pleaded to the fans in the Wabash Valley, even on my postgame show with Brian Geeson. I said, losses happen. And the one thing that I remember is Indiana State played Southern Illinois last year. And Indiana State had a great first half. It was up 10, getting great shots. And then all of a sudden and it was a good crowd. And then Southern, takes over. I mean, the Mask, Lance Jones, and you hear all those guys. But then I never felt like the crowd showed up again last year for a team that was 23-13. And my plea to them is come out and support this team. This team is 22-4. This is a spectacular team, and they deserve the support. And so it's good to hear that the UIC game is close to a sellout, and you just hope that that's what's going to happen the rest of the year inside the Holman Center. But I'm looking forward to Saturday. It's going to be a great game. And I know that Southern Illinois, they are a different animal on their home floor, and they're going to be looking, to exact some revenge because Indiana State put it on in that game. And, it's going to be a great game, great environment. Looking to see you, Luke, looking to see you, Harry. It's going to be a great game. My family's going to go down there with me, so looking forward to it.
Thanks for the reminder about the game in November, Joey.
You're welcome. I had to get that in there.
Need the reminder.
Guys, I appreciate your time today. 6 p.m. Saturday, Southern Illinois hosting the nationally ranked, I can't say that enough, nationally ranked Indiana State Sycamores. I hear that ticket sales are up for Arch Madness. And as we mentioned, attendance up around the league. It is a great time to be a Missouri Valley Conference basketball fan. And guys, I appreciate your time today. Looking forward to bumping into both of you. Luke, when the last time I did a game where you were at, we went to dinner. So are Joey and I and you going to have dinner together Saturday? I'm just looking for a free meal.
I mean, I'm up for it. I mean, we can make it happen. So, I mean, that's completely fine. Now, I mean, we had Moggers in Terre Haute. That was always one of my favorite spots, and we had that when you came into town. So, I'll give you and Joey a treat. We can show you some good gyms here in the Carbondale area.
Spectacular.
Let's do it.
Gentlemen, thanks so much. That's Joey O'Rourke. He's the play-by-play broadcaster for the nationally ranked Sycamores, and that's Luke Martin, the voice of the Salukis from Southern Illinois. Can't wait to be with you guys on Saturday. Don't forget, 6 p.m. game on ESPN+. Dan Muller joins me on that broadcast. Going to be a ton of fun. You've been watching live right here on Twitter and on YouTube, Voices of the Valley, part of the Valley Hoops Insider podcast world and Valley Hoops Insider website. Thanks for joining us today. I want to remind you, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon.